Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, hello. This is Jerry Tolliver with Fly Credit Solutions. We're going to get everything started momentarily. I'm going to give everyone a moment to get on board. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, what is it, Valentine's? Oh my goodness. Valentine's Day in 2018. We're already here. So in efforts to show the love and spread all the goodness today, we're going to be sharing 5 things you need to know about disputing collection accounts on your credit report. So I'm going to give you all just a moment just to get in here, and then we're going to get it started. I hope everyone can hear me okay and see the presentation. So I'm actually going to pull this up on my other computer just to make sure that we can see and hear everything. All right, let's see. I think I might be having some technical difficulties. Bear with me, bear with me. Let's see. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right, is that working? No, it's not working. Let's see. We're going to try this again. Let's see. Everyone, let me know if you can, if we can see or hear everything okay. Here we go. Here we go. All right, I think we're on board now. Perfect. All right, everybody. So we're at 7:01. So I hope that whoever wants to jump on here can jump on here as we're going through the information. Now, my name is Jerry Tolliver. I am the owner of Fly Credit Solutions. And what we do at Fly Credit Solutions is we help everyday consumers learn the importance of their credit. We help them with disputing derogatory accounts off of their credit reports. We help them with educating them and helping them understand the importance of their credit, because we all know that if your credit is not up to par, if you're not diligent about your credit score, then it could literally hurt you. It could set you back a few months, a few years if we don't take care of our credit score. So today I'm going to be giving you a lot of great information that's going to help you with navigating around collection accounts. Now, collection accounts are probably one of the most common derogatory accounts that you'll find on your credit report. So we're going to be talking through how you can effectively remove that from your credit report. Now, if you don't know what a collection account is, we're going to be discussing what that is. We're also going to be discussing how you can effectively remove it from your credit report. So we're going to be reviewing 5 key things that you should know to remove collection accounts from your credit reports. So I want you guys to take out some paper, a pen, take some notes as I'm going through this information. If you are a member, this information will be recorded and you can always come back to it. However, I do highly encourage you to participate while we're going through this information. If you have any questions, write some questions below so that I can make sure that I can answer them while we're going through this information. So I hope you guys are ready. Let's go ahead and get it started. Now, first of all, what is a collection account, right? Everybody asks me, well, what's the difference between a collection account or a debt collector? Well, a collection account is a loan that has been turned over to a third-party debt collection agency due to either poor payment practices of the borrower or you just didn't pay it at all. So the creditor may continue to own the debt, or they may assign or sell the debt outright to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar. Now, when I say pennies on the dollar, I literally mean pennies on the dollar. Whereas if you have an account where you may owe, let's say $100, $200, they may literally sell your debt to a third-party collection agency for $20, $30, maybe even less, depending on how old the debt is. So if the debt is older and the creditor knows for sure, you know what, I may not be able to collect on this debt, well, they're going to sell it for a little bit of nothing. Now, what happens is when collectors or creditors have accounts open with consumers and consumers don't pay off the debt, what they'll do is they'll write off that debt after about 3-4 months of non-collection. So if they're trying to collect on the debt, if they're calling you, and they figure, well, you know what, I'm not going to be able to collect on it, then they'll write it off as a loss on their taxes. They'll sell it outright to a third-party collection agency and let them deal with it. Now, if a debt is sold to a collection agency, the original creditor is not going to deal with you. They've already cut their ties. They already collected that tax deduction at the end of the year, and they've already just claimed it as a loss. But because of this transfer of ownership of your debt from the creditor to the collection agency, you don't really have to pay the collection agency until they can prove to you that you owe this debt, right? If you supposedly owe a debt to a third party, it's up to the third party to prove to you that you actually owe them this money. So, and this is a great benefit for you. Now, should you pay a collection agency? I get this question all of the time. Well, collection agencies, collection accounts are considered very detrimental. They're very, very detrimental to your credit score, whether they're paid or whether they're not paid. So once it reports on your credit report, the damage has already been done. There's really nothing that you can do about it unless you get it removed from your credit report. Even if you pay the collection account, it's still going to reflect negatively on your credit report. It'll just be a collection account that has been paid versus a collection account that has not been paid. But nevertheless, it's still a collection account. And you don't really want a creditor, you don't want a lender, you don't want a bank, you don't want anyone to see that you ever had a collection account on your credit reports. Now, after about 7 to 10 years, depending on where you live, after the statute of limitations, after it expires, then a collection account will automatically fall off of your credit report. Now, this time clock, it starts, the statute of limitations, this time clock starts 7 years from the date of the first missed payment that led to the collection. So if you missed a payment in June, but you made a payment in August, well, if you missed the payment in September, that's when that time frame will start. Once that's when that 7-year countdown will start. Okay, so after you miss the first payment, then it'll start. But after, even if you pay a collection account, it does not remove it from your credit report. It just shows as a paid collection account. So even if you pay it, it'll still sit on your credit report for that 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Okay. So what you really, really want to do is you want to attempt to remove it from your credit report first. Now, how do you do that? You have a couple of different ways that you can do that. The first way you can do it is you have to dispute it with the credit bureau directly. Now, the credit bureau is either, sometimes they call it a credit reporting agency. Now, these are Experian, this is Equifax, this is TransUnion. So these are the major credit bureaus. There are more than those three. However, those are the three major. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a dispute letter to the credit bureau. Now, you have to do this first. If you're going to dispute anything on your credit report, you have to dispute it with the credit bureaus first. Now, once you dispute it with the credit bureaus, this method is the very first method, the very basic method that you have to take. And what you have to do is you have to write a letter to the credit bureau to request an investigation of the collection account that's reporting on your credit. Now, some of the reasons that you can use to dispute are either the account is not yours or it's not your account. Now, you have to be careful with this type of dispute, because if you dispute it as not yours or it's not your account, then you may end up putting a freeze or fraud alert on your credit report. And if you do that, then it may actually slow you down a little bit. It may put a few little roadblocks in your way with disputing collection or disputing any type of account on your credit report. If it belongs to you, do not dispute it as not mine. Okay, don't do that, because once they investigate and they prove that it is yours, it will pop up. It'll pop back up on your credit report, even if it was already deleted from your credit. Okay, if they do the investigation and they do find that the account belongs to you, it will reappear on your credit reports. Another way that you can dispute the information on your credit is you can dispute either you didn't pay late that month. So if you do see that there's some late payments reporting on the account, and you notice that the late payment history or the payment history period is incorrect, then according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that information has to be deleted. Now you have two consumer laws that protect you. If you have not already downloaded or printed or made some notes in your free flawless credit guide, you need to do that. The free flawless credit guide that everyone should have received when they signed up to be a part of our weekly webinars. The free credit guide gives you a lot of great information about consumer law. So you have the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and you have the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, basically in a nutshell, it basically says that every single account, all the information that's reporting on your credit report, it has to be accurate, it has to be free of errors, and it cannot be outdated. So everything on your credit report has to be 100% accurate. If it is not accurate, then you do have some next steps that you can take, which we will cover later on in this webinar. Now, you can also dispute the wrong amount. You can dispute the wrong account number. You can dispute the original creditor, the charge-off date, the date of last activity, the balance history, the credit limit. There's so many different ways that you can dispute an account on your credit report, but you just have to make sure that what you're disputing is the right thing. Okay, make sure that whatever inaccuracies that you find, that's what you're going to dispute. Okay. The next way that you can dispute a collection account is through debt validation. Now, the best way to deal with the collection agency period is through this method. Okay, this method involves leveraging your protection under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act to force the collection agency to provide documentation that the debt is valid. So basically, what you'd have to do is you'd have to write another letter to the collection agency directly. Now, this is not to the credit bureau. The credit bureau and the original creditor or the collection agency, there are two different entities. Okay, so the first is the credit bureau. That's TransUnion, that's Equifax, that's Experian. The debt collector or the collection agency, that is your I can even think of some of the most collection agencies that we always see on credit reports, but the enhanced recovery, or some of these collection agencies that some of these major companies send their debt to. Well, they have to abide by what we call the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, meaning that they have to follow very, very specific guidelines when they're trying to collect debt from you. So in other words, they cannot call you at any time of the day or night. They cannot call your neighbor. They can't call your job. There are a lot of different things they cannot do. If you have not reviewed the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, I highly encourage you to do so. We have outlined a lot of this information already in our free credit guide. So we've already put all of this information in our free flawless credit guide. So you really want to go through that information. You really want to study that. You want to get familiar with it, because these are your consumer laws. This is your protection as a consumer. And these are things that you really need to know, because if you've got collectors or collection agencies calling you day and night, calling your neighbor, your sister, your brother, that's something that they can't do. And you have protection and you have rights and you have activities and things that you can put into place to protect you from these behaviors. Okay. If they don't follow these, and you can threaten to file a lawsuit, and you can do this by letter as well. So the debt validation is what you're doing is you're asking them to validate this debt that you supposedly owe to them. Now, let me ask you, if you owed your friend George some money. And George sent a friend of his to your door to collect the money from you on his behalf. Would you give him the money? Or would you ask him a couple of questions first? I would hope that you would ask his friend a couple of questions first. Because who wants to just give up their hard earned money to somebody who they don't know? You want to ask the necessary questions. You want to make sure that they're qualified to collect this money from you on behalf of your friend. So, what is required for debt validation? One of the following items is necessary for debt validation. One, proof that the collection agency owns the debt or has actually been assigned the debt. So there are two different scenarios. Either the debt collector, either they purchased the debt outright from the original creditor, or the original creditor assigned the debt to the collection agency to collect on their behalf. And the collection agency will not collect any money or from the creditor. They won't get paid until they collect the money from you. All right. So those are the two different scenarios. Most of the time, collection agencies are really, really aggressive, especially when they're trying to collect on behalf of the creditor and they haven't been paid yet. So you're going to get a lot of phone calls. You're going to get a lot of letters, a lot of that. But it's really important that you catch that ahead of time. Be very proactive about this. Collection agencies will always send you a letter in the mail that tells you that they've received a debt in their office. Sometimes they'll mask it as a law firm or whatever. But nevertheless, even if you get a letter from a law firm, if they are acting as a collection agency, then they have to follow the rules under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. I'll say this again because a lot of people get really nervous when they see XYZ Law Group when they find a letter in their mailbox. Let me tell you something. If you haven't been served any paperwork, then you're not being sued, okay? If you haven't been served any paperwork, you're not being sued. However, a collection agency has to validate any debt before they can collect any money from you. Even if they're a law firm, they have to abide by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. They are not special. They still have to abide by the rules. Number two, a copy of a statement from the original creditor or a copy of the original signed loan agreement or credit card application. I can tell you how many times we've actually gotten this back from a creditor. Now, granted, a collection agency more than likely doesn't have this information, but if your account is still with the original creditor, right? If it's a charged off repossession or if it's charged off credit card, in most cases, they still do have the original signed agreement. So you have to move around that as a different way. However, collection agencies do have to provide this information to you. If they don't, they have to remove it from your credit report. Number three, they can also provide a copy of a canceled check from you to the original creditor. If they provide that, then that is proof that they have validated the debt and the debt belongs to you. Now, I want you to know that under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, Section 809, you are allowed to validate the debt, right? And the creditor, in this case, the collection agency, must provide you with one of the items that are listed above. Okay? So they have to validate the debt. I just want to stick this in your mind. They have to validate the debt. They have to provide you with one of the three following options, okay, in order to prove that the validation is legitimate, okay? Now, you're probably asking yourself, what if they cannot validate the debt? What do you do, right? If they cannot validate the debt, they cannot collect on the debt, all right? They are also not allowed to contact you about the debt. And they are also not allowed to report it on your credit reports under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. If they do any of these three, they are violating the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and you can sue them for up to $1,000 in damages for violations of the act. So you have protection, guys. And no matter how bad a collection agency may try to make you feel for not paying a debt or whatever the case is, if they cannot validate it, they just cannot collect on it, point blank, period. You ever wonder why collection agencies ask you for your name or your address or your birth date when they call you? You ever wonder that when they actually should have that information on file anyway? Well, what they're usually doing is they're attaching you to this account, right? They're asking you, well, what's your birthday? Or what's your address? And once you say it, the call is recorded, first of all, right? They tell you that up front. The call is recorded, and anything that you say will be used against you in the court of law. They may not say that, but it's the same. It's the same. It's the same thing. Primarily, it's the same thing. So anything that you say on that phone, they will use against you. So if you don't want to give them that information, you don't have to give them that information. If you don't want them to call you, you could just tell them, don't call me anymore. Only respond to me, or only correspond with me by mail. You have the right to do that, okay? So if they cannot validate the debt, they have to remove it from your credit report. If they don't, then you can sue. Now, another option that you can take is you can also dispute with the original creditor. So original creditors, they actually are kind of governed under different rules with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Technically speaking, if the debt is still with the original creditor, then they don't really have to abide by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Let's see, case by case, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if it's with the original creditor, so if you have an account with Capital One and Capital One is trying to collect this debt from you, quite frankly, they can call you almost as many times they want to. They still can't really call you before or after business hours. However, they are not governed by the same rules that collection agencies are governed by, because technically speaking, that's the original creditor. It's the original debt. In most cases, they have the original paperwork and wet signatures on file that ties you to this amount that you owe. So if you dispute with the original creditor, you also have a little bit of leverage under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Section 623. So this actually allows consumers to dispute a negative listing reporting on their credit reports. And it really doesn't matter, honestly, if it's accurate or not. If you're not sure at all, if you're honestly not sure, you can dispute anything on your credit report. It's up to the credit bureaus. It's really their burden of proving to you that you owe them this money, okay? So the way this works is the consumer requests an investigation of the account, and about 30 days, the creditor is required to reply back to your dispute. In order to use this dispute, you must have first disputed the account with the credit bureaus, okay? There is an order of operation, if you will. First, you have to dispute it with the credit bureau. The reason being is because the credit bureau is like the third party. The credit bureau is who's reporting this information, right? So you have to dispute it with them first. Once you dispute it with the credit bureau, then they're going to send a affidavit, if you will, electronic notification to the creditor, and then the creditor has the obligation of responding to that request that they have received from the credit bureau. After about 30 days, the creditor is supposed to get back to the credit bureau to let them know what the outcome of the investigation is. If they don't do that within 30 days, then it does have to be removed from your credit reports. But just a note of caution, if they do verify it or validate it after that 30 days and they've already deleted it from your credit report, they could still put it back, okay? They would still have to what's the word I'm looking for? They would have to notify you first. They would have to send you a letter before they put it back on your credit reports, but nevertheless, that could happen, okay? The next thing that you could do is you could do a settle for deletion. So if you've disputed the crap out of these collection accounts and they still have not been removed from your credit reports, you can use your money as leverage, okay? Because more than likely, collection agencies and debt collectors, they've already spent, pennies on the dollar for your debt anyway, so they don't necessarily have to collect the entire amount. Now this works really well if the collection amounts are over $1,000, because in most cases creditors know that if it's a large amount, the likelihood of them being able to collect on all of it is slim to none, especially if it's an old debt. So this method involves more negotiating with the collection agency to reduce the amount of the debt that you're going to pay. So if you're going to give them any money towards any of these collection accounts, what I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to do is ask them for a removal in exchange for the amount due. Okay. Now, granted, they don't have to do it. They don't have to remove it from your credit report if you make a payment, but it is something that you could request. Okay. How much should you offer? If you decide that you want to give them a settlement offer, what I would generally say is offer them 25% of the total debt or less. Okay. Like I said, most collection agencies pay pennies on the dollar for the debt anyway. So if you want to pay it off, try starting at about 25% of the debt that you owe. The amount that the company pays for the bad debt depends on the account and its age. So, for example, a debt that has recently been charged off, they'll pay about 6 to 7 cents on the dollar. Accounts that are slightly older and a collection agency or two has already tried collecting on this account, then it's about $1.50. So it's about 50 cents or 2 cents on the dollar. Really, it's 1 cent, 1.5 cent, 2 cent on the dollar. And 3 years old or debts that are out of the statute of limitations, they pay about a penny or less. So they're literally paying a little bit of nothing for your debt. So you don't really want to give them $1,000 if you could get away with only giving them about $250. If you could do that, then I would highly, highly encourage you to so. But just know that the more recent your account is, the more money you generally will have to pay. Now, another thing that you could try is you could also try a pay for a deletion. So if you decide that you want to do a pay for deletion, then you can pay the account off in full in exchange for a deletion. So this is better if your account is $500 or less. So it's like utility bills, collection accounts, just old miscellaneous stuff that just pops up on your credit report, right? Just magically pops up there. And you want to pay it off, but it's sitting there on your credit report. So you got to get the collection agency to agree to remove the listing from your credit report if you pay the total amount. Now, this is a very, very successful technique. We've used this with a couple of clients, and a lot of collection agencies have been able to work something out with the client where if they make the payment on the account in full, then they'll go ahead and remove it from their credit reports. But just make sure that if you're going to use this technique, make sure that you at least get that agreement in writing. I always highly, highly encourage anybody that if you're going to be disputing anything in your credit reports, make sure that you get that information in writing first. If you don't get it in writing, then how would you know, or how else would you be able to hold them accountable to what they say they're going to do? So get it in writing. So if in case anything happens, or in case they're still violating some laws or rules or regulations, then you can always take them to court. But nevertheless, this is a good option that you can take. If you guys have any questions at all about the information that we've reviewed today, please feel free to contact us directly at contact@flycredit.com. I'll also go ahead and look below and see if anybody has any questions while we're live now, so that we can answer them while we're all together. So again, collection accounts is really one of those things that could literally hurt your credit score tremendously. If they're fresh, you really want to get those collection accounts off of your credit reports. If you were trying to get a home, if you're trying to get another car, if you're trying to land a new job, you're going to have you need some pretty decent credit, right? And you want it to be as spotless as possible. So if you're struggling with collection accounts, if you're struggling with charged off accounts, if you're struggling with bankruptcies, any of these negative type of derogatory accounts that are eating away at your credit score, you really want to start taking the necessary steps to get that stuff cleaned up as soon as possible. Now, we do offer a credit repair course. Our ultimate credit repair course will give you all of the tools, all of the knowledge, everything that you'll need, the resources to take your credit from point A to point B in record-breaking time. We've had clients that have tried the course and literally have transformed their credit score in as less as 90 days. Okay. You've got information about consumer laws in depth. You've got information about how to dispute negative accounts on your credit reports. We've given you over 200 dispute letters that can help you dispute charge-off, repossessions, bankruptcies, tax liens, collection accounts, late payments, inquiries. All these different type of accounts, they do require different strategies. So if you guys want to know any more about that, please feel free to reach out to us directly at contact@flycredit.com. Feel free to click on the button below to schedule a free consultation with us. I'll be more than happy to help you with navigating around any of your credit troubles. But I do see that nobody has any questions below. But if you do, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help. Again, this is Jerry Tolliver with Fly Credit Solutions, and I look forward to seeing you next week on our next webinar, where we'll be talking about how to compose a dispute letter so that you can actually start getting those disputes out to clean up your credit reports. But until then, again, this is Jerry Tolliver with Fly Credit Solutions. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.